deep is the sea? 70% of our Earth's surface is surrounded by oceans, 96% of the water on Earth is seawater, so the Earth is actually an ocean planet. However, human beings do not know more than 5% about the ocean, just like human beings know about the universe to about the same extent. Today let me take you to understand this mysterious ocean. The average depth of the ocean is 3,680 meters, and the height of the Puma Pen Valley is about the same. And the average height of the global land mass is only 860 meters. The deepest part of the ocean is in the Mariana Trench, which reaches a depth of more than 11,000 meters, higher than Mount Everest. From the top of Mount Everest to the deepest part of the Mariana Trench is a total of 20,000 meters. Next, I will take you down to explore the ocean. First, dive down to 3 meters. This is the depth at which people swim. We continue down to the 20-meter to 30-meter zone, where many coral reefs and aquatic plants grow from 20 to 30 meters underwater. The dive continues to 40 meters, which is the maximum depth for recreational diving. This depth is the limit of recreational diving, because after diving deeper than 40 meters, people will have joint pain or dizziness, similar to the feeling of climbing high mountains. This is the same as climbing up a mountain. This is the same symptom that occurs when you go up, and also when you go down. The world's deepest swimming pool is also 40 meters, it is located in a hotel in Italy, is designed specifically for diving enthusiasts. This hotel is called Monte Grotto Terme. People who like to dive especially like to stay at this hotel. We continue our dive to 70 meters. At this depth humans hallucinate. But whale sharks generally live in these waters. Continuing down to 100 meters, a depth that is the limit for professional divers, at this depth lives the North Pacific giant octopus. This octopus is able to change color like a chameleon and grows so large, reaching 6 meters in length, that when humans first discovered it on the bottom of the sea, they thought it was a sea monster. We continued our dive to 130 meters, where a wedding was held for 2 professional divers. At the time he wanted to have a wedding that no one else could do, and it was really meaningful that the priest dived with them because the priest was their instructor. We continued to dive down to 200 meters underwater, and usually below 200 meters underwater, we call it the deep zone. Because below this depth there is not enough light to produce photosynthesis, there are basically no green leafy plants below this depth. At this depth lives a fish called the yellow-banded fish, also known as the sea dragon king. We continue to dive down to 300 meters, where we can meet the big crabs that we all like to eat. This crab is called Gammon's giant crabs. Its legs are especially long and its head is especially small. Its legs are 4 meters long when stretched out. In fact, Egyptian Ahmed Gamal Gabr once dived to this depth and set a world record. At that time, he was carrying an oxygen tank on his back and it took him 15 minutes to dive to this depth, and he originally wanted to dive to 350 meters, but when he dived to 332 meters, he lost consciousness and had all kinds of hallucinations. And then he began to float up after he dived to this depth. There were 30 staff around him watching him dive, so he was able to float safely. We continued to dive down to 500 meters, and at this depth it was no longer a human world, but a complete animal world. As the largest animal in the world, the blue whale's ultimate depth for diving is 500 meters. Blue whale is not only the body is large, its roar is also particularly large. It is in the water issued by the roar of 188 decibels, then the roar of fighter jets are larger, and its roar can spread 1,600 kilometers. In addition to the blue whale there is something else unexpected that can be found in this part of the world, and that is the penguin. That's right, the largest species of penguin is called the emperor penguin. This emperor penguin can easily dive to more than 500 meters and can swim for about 10 minutes at will. This is one of the most resistant birds. This depth is roughly equivalent to the height of Taipei 101. We continue to dive down to 600 meters. Here lives a kind of what is called the large-finned hindquarter fish. Its head is transparent, its eyes are facing upwards, so it can't look forward or downwards, only upwards. Continuing down to 700 meters, this is where the European eel lives. In fact, the eel lives half of the time in the sea. When it needs to spawn, it swims to the river. It is then caught and eaten by people. We continue to dive to 900 meters, where the king squid lives. The king squid is more than 10 meters long, with eyes as big as a human head, and there are a lot of them. We continue to dive to 1,000 meters. This is called the semi-deep belt. There is no light at all in this area. It is completely dark and there are fewer animals from this area onwards. We continue down to 1,300 meters where one of the largest sea turtles called the leatherback turtle lives. This turtle has a soft shell and will go to the beach to lay its eggs and then return to this deep sea zone. There is also a very scary shark called the European kissing shark that lives here, also known as the kobold shark because it looks so much like a kobold. Its best feature is that its mouth is separate from its jaws, and when it eats and opens its mouth, the teeth in its mouth fly out and bite things down and then retract. It's just like an alien. We continued our dive to 1,700 meters. Where there is a very cute amphibian called the southern elephant trumpet seal, which is one of the largest species of seals. It's the largest of the seals, with a particularly large snout, and an adult seal can weigh up to 5 tons. It's nearly 7 meters long. We continue to dive to 2,000 meters. Where inhabits a fish called the black dragon fish. This fish is really like the alien fish in the movie, the body all black, a row of sharp teeth. Who saw it is afraid. We continue to dive to 3,000 meters, where the water temperature is only 1 degree to 2 degrees, completely lightless. Water pressure is more than 300 MPa, there are very few fish here, but there is a kind of oversized fish living here, that is the sperm whale. It can dive up to 3,000 meters in one breath, and of course, it dives so deep for one purpose, to eat king squid. Scientists estimate that sperm whales around the world eat roughly 5 million king squid every year. Because the king squid's mouth is too hard to digest, and the sperm whale's stomach juices are always entangled together, and finally form something like a stone, people will take out this stone. Found that it can always give off a fragrance, so the name of this whale to the sperm whale. We continue to dive to 3,800 meters, where a ship is parked Titanic. 1912 Titanic and Jack sank here together. More than 100 years passed until today this ship has not been salvaged. And it has been listed as the world's underwater cultural heritage. Salvage is currently not allowed. But it is said that Cameron has been to 33 times, is that shoot Titanic director. We continue to dive to 4,000 meters, where there is a fish called the viperfish. You will find that most of the deep sea fish have very long teeth. This is due to the depth of the sea at the food is particularly small, once the bite of the prey can never let it escape. As a result, their teeth have evolved to be very long. We continued the dive to 8,178 meters. Which is the deepest place where humans have found fish inhabiting. In April 2017, a Chinese deep-sea exploration team found a white fish at 8,150 meters, and they also prepared some food for these little white fish, and the little fish quickly all ran over to eat it. It was probably the most delicious food the little white fish had ever eaten in their lives. Finally we reached the deepest place in the ocean, the Mariana Trench. Which is known as the Challenger's Deep. This place reaches a depth of 11,034 meters. The total number of people who have reached this depth so far is 4, 2 of them reached this depth in 1960, one of them is Don Walsh and the other one is Jacques Picard. It took them 5 hours to dive down to the bottom of the ocean at 10,916 meters, but when they just reached the bottom of the ocean and found a bed crack, they floated up right away, but before they floated up, they looked around as much as they could, and surprisingly, they found a bed crack there. Looked around and surprisingly found flounder there, as well as shrimp. The third person to dive to this depth was Cameron, who made that dive in 2012 with funding from National Geographic and Rolex. He was on the bottom for over 2 hours, and he reportedly saw creatures that looked like shrimp. And then nothing else. He said this ocean floor was as barren as the surface of the moon. The last person to dive to the bottom of the sea was Victor Vescovo, a controlling shareholder of an American private equity fund, who completed 2 dives in April and May 2019, 2 months in a row. His dive depth was 10,928 meters. He said he saw nothing living on the bottom of the sea, just a bunch of garbage bags. In 1960 there were halibut and shrimp on the bottom of the sea, in 2012 there were no more halibut, only shrimp, and in 2019 there were only garbage bags. It's something to think about. In fact, exploring this trench will help us understand the universe, and it will give us an idea of the limits of biological survival. So far we've learned that living things can live without light, so it's not necessary to look for living things around stars. But living things must have water, and 94% of the living things on this world are aquatic, and even on land all living things need water to survive. Only some microorganisms have been found to be able to enter a state of pseudo-death in the absence of water. But give it a drop of water and it immediately comes to life. The moon is also barren, all rocks. If you give him a drop of water, the rocks may also be able to live. It's entirely possible. What do you think?